The federal budget was yesterday. Maybe you watched it, maybe you didn't. But there's one thread that we thought we'd pick up on and explain, because it's not as straightforward as it sounds.
Pour 11 millions du Canadien.
For 11 million Canadians and Canadian families, the new grocery rebate will help offset higher prices without fueling inflation.
So according to the federal finance minister, this is a way of helping those Canadians who need help most. A leg up, considering how inflation's at 5.2% year over year, and how food inflation specifically is up more than double that amount, 10.6%.
I don't think it's doing anything major. My mom is gonna have some benefits out of it, but apart from that, they definitely could be doing more.
I'm sure it'll catch the attention of a lot of voters. I'd prefer to see a focus on keeping costs down rather than giving cash out.
So this $2.5 billion grocery rebate program is going to be welcome news for millions of people. But how exactly does it work? Who's eligible? And is it really a grocery rebate program at all? So here's what we know. This rebate is a one-time payment that the government figures should help, as you heard, around 11 million Canadians, low-income Canadians. And what do we mean when we say low income? So a household that makes under about $40,000 a year. The exact threshold depends on when they actually roll the rebate out, but it's around $40,000 a year. And the size of your rebate drops steadily as your income goes up. So for example, if you're married with 2 kids, if you make more than $60,000, you just get no rebate at all. You're just not eligible. So the amount of the rebate you get varies, but some quick napkin math. Let's say you're an eligible couple with 2 kids. You'd be eligible for up to $467 as part of this grocery rebate. If you're single, then the amount is a little bit lower. You're eligible for an amount up to $234. And if you're a senior, how do I draw this? There's a cane. Then you're eligible for up to $225. So that's it. There are no other real strings attached, no requirement that you spend the money on groceries, and the amount that you receive doesn't hinge on how much you do spend on groceries. It's just tied to age, income, etc. It's sort of like the GST tax credit in that sense. And in fact, it's actually administered the exact same way as the GST tax credit. So you're not going to get a check in the mail that says grocery rebate on it. If you're eligible and you file an annual tax return, you're automatically considered. As for when the money arrives, that depends on when the legislation actually gets through the House of Commons, so it doesn't happen overnight. But this is where we sort of hit pause for a second, because if this rebate isn't tied to how much you spend on groceries, and it doesn't have to be spent on groceries, and it's administered through a system that has nothing to do with groceries, then why is it called a grocery rebate? Well, CBC business correspondent Peter Armstrong is here to explain. And so Peter, I mean, at least we all agree, grocery prices are high.
They are.
Lots of people could use a rebate. So for no other reason than that, maybe the name is just fine. But why is it that people say this is not really a grocery rebate?
You know, what I hate about stories like this is it exposes people like me as the blowhard pedantics that we really are, and that, you know, yes, this helps, but what I really want to focus on is what it's called.
Sure.
It's not a grocery rebate because it has nothing to do with groceries, right? You don't have to buy groceries to get the rebate. You don't have to spend the rebate on groceries. You can spend it on whatever you want. You get it because you qualify, not because it has anything to do with groceries. That doesn't take away from the fact that it does help, and it's important, and it's good, and it's, you know, it's the kind of thing you want to see governments doing. But to call it a grocery rebate this is just marketing at its best. I think of the guy who came up with the terminology from the last budget, where they just called it a GST rebate.
Right.
And you know, he probably got up last night thinking, man, if only I had used my namer of things skills better and called, you know, mine a childcare rebate or a beer rebate or whatever, something that people could have latched onto. But yeah, this is just marketing.
Bottom line, it is money back, right?
For sure.
For those Canadians who are in sort of the lowest income brackets. What is the impact then, if we set the politics and the marketing aside?
Look, this is, as I say, it is important and it will help. And, you know, remember, 2/3 of Canadians make less than $46,000 a year. So there's this whole swath of Canadians that need this money, that are going to benefit from it, and that's important. You don't want to take away from that. You want to see government programs that are actually out there helping Canadians, and this will help. You know, the fact that we have issues with terminology aside doesn't really play into that.
Wasn't the tax credit bigger?
Yeah, so it's important to remember that in the last budget, the GST rebate had been doubled. In this case, it's gone up by 1.5 times. And you have to factor in that in the last budget, they had a low-income Canadian rent subsidy. That's been eliminated. So I think the average family we're talking about here that gets, what, $467 is a little bit worse off as a result of this budget than they were in the last
Right,
budget.
and that's what strikes me as curious, because in absolute terms, as you say, the amount that families are getting back, certainly as part of this GST tax rebate, is
a little bit less.
A little bit less. So why would the government have not, for example, either given more money or even just give the same money to more people to help more people in these difficult times?
The whole trick, the balancing act that the government's trying to enact here is to help people that need it, but not flood the zone with too much money so people are spending more that would fuel inflation. And
right.
You need to be careful of that. You don't need to be too careful. I think that can be overstated. But in this, they have a targeted, they have a means-tested program that can help the people that we know already qualify for it because they're qualifying for the GST credit. You know, the issue is get it to the people who need it. Don't kind of flood the zone with money because that will add to inflation.
So targeted help, they don't want to flood the zone, as you say, causing the inflation problem to actually get worse rather than better. So with the measures sort of implemented here, given what you said about how, you know, it's still sort of a Band-Aid solution. It is a one-time payment. So what's the takeaway here?
Well, look, it's a one-time payment, and it's a small fix on a huge problem. And the economist Armin Yalnizyan always talks about the fact this isn't really an inflation crisis we're in, it's an affordability crisis. As we've seen, the rate of inflation is falling. It was at, what, 8.1%, and then 7%, and then 6%, and now 5.2%. It's going, the inflation numbers are falling. Prices are not. Prices are going to continue to go up from here. So people that are struggling with the high price of groceries or gas or whatever it may be aren't going back to the way things were in 2019. And getting a $460 check doesn't change any of that.
Always the bearer of good news, huh, Peter?
That's right. I'm just here to help. Sorry about that.
At least you do it with a smile. That I appreciate. Peter Armstrong, thank you so much.
You bet.